sisters,
brothers.
We're the people who live in communities where 50 new prisons have been built every single year for the past 20 years.
You gotta be kidding. You're telling me that in the United States of America, 50 new prisons have been built every year for the past 20 years? Who would believe that?
it's a fact. We are the victims of crimes.
We are the families of guards.
We are the families of prisoners.
I know from something that a student told me that you had your students do some activities that it wasn't, maybe this is the way you mount all your plays, but it seemed different than the usual way.
Definitely.
And could you talk a little bit about that?
Because I have to remember, because it's been a little while. But I know definitely, we did several things. One of which was we created several reading groups that included members of the cast, but also community members. And we read a book called Gates of Injustice, which was about the prison system in the United States. So that was one thing that we did outside of rehearsals.
Early on in chapter 10, there's this one part that really kind of frightened me, and that was the contrast of the prisons that are popping up in rural sectors in the past 20 years, and how these are often in places where oil and farming and other means of like coal mines and other means of economy have collapsed. And so it's replacing like in West Texas or in Virginia, Tennessee here, like it's replacing the old economic mode, and which means it's becoming a new cash crop. Prisons are becoming cash crops for these places, and if that's the case, then they have to deal with the similar factors of supply and demand. There has to always be more prisoners and more prisons.
Right. I mean, there was a prison not far from campus, and we all went and took a tour. Now, I'd been teaching in prisons for decades, so it wasn't new to me. But for them, it was a real eye opener, and so that was an important element as well.
And I was thinking about what could I do or what could we do to help this situation become a little bit better. And then I was thinking, just by reading this book, none of us are ever going to vote for any politician because they say they're soft or they're tough on crime. We're going to, immediately realize that that's just some catchy phrase meaning that they spend too much money on prisons. And that, I think, is valuable in and of itself, because everyone that reads this book will now have that perspective, or at least hopefully.
How do you think having them do that affected their participation in the process?
Well, I mean, several of them became very interested in the sort of activism aspect of the entire movement. So they became involved with one of the local agencies that dealt with inmate. If I remember right, it was an organization that helped inmates once they got out of prison make the transition back into regular life. Several of them, I think, kept up with the Thousand Kites website and participated in some of those campaigns that were going on. And they just became much more aware. And I think a little bit more aware that theater could be used for something more than simply entertainment, that it could involve enlightenment and activism as well.
I represent the ones that yearn to be heard so